I'm Dan, I'll chair from the start. Tassim or Cavill will take over towards the end of the first half. So today we'll be discussing the elections and other Labour Party matters in the first part. And in the second part, we'll discuss trade union issues, particularly the Unite General Secretary election and the Unison NEC election. Following the good work of the LLA trade union group, Unite and Unison Caucuses, and the recent hustings that Howard Beckett turned up to, and the subsequent poll of LLA supporters that are in Unite. We'll have a free discussion in each section of the meeting following the intro. That's Steve Price.
Okay, sorry, I've just unmuted everybody. Muted everybody, sorry. Okay.
So a reminder that we're encouraging comrades to bring motions to these meetings, preferably in writing, especially if it is something detailed and in advance. But within reason, we'll take motions or proposals on the day so we can all vote on things. Usual procedures, hands up using the buttons on Zoom, please, because there's too many people to see hands up in the video. Points of order or clarifications of things, just put something in the chat, or if it's urgent, just speak up. But please wait until the end of any contribution rather than interruptions. Keep on mute until you need to speak. So Roger Silverman had intended to give an introduction about the elections at the start of the meeting, but unfortunately something came up, he couldn't make it. So Tina will cover the matter of the elections in her part, which of course have been terrible, losing Hartlepool by a good thrashing compared to a high point under Corbyn in 2017, and losing control of about 8 councils, I think, Tories taking 12 more in net, and doing nothing in Scotland, and the Tories taking 5 seats in Wales. Of course, the right are trying to pin it on Corbyn and the left, and in fact, the LLA released a statement about it all recently. But I'll hand over to Tina now, who can tell us a bit more and tell us a bit more about some Labour stuff. Thanks, Tina.
Thank you. You've covered most of the things I was going to say, Dan. Not quite. Oh, I mean, it has been terrible. I don't think many of us are particularly surprised about how terrible it's been. Hartlepool was, yes, a symbolic defeat, but so far it looks like Labour has lost well over 300 council seats and control of 7 councils in England alone. Hartlepool was held by Labour since the seat was created in 1974, so this is a biggie. And I mean, it's quite incredible because there's 4 investigations against Boris Johnson alone. There is a ton of sleaze and corruption allegations. There's billions of contracts worth billions of pounds given to friends and cronies, etc. I mean, Tory sleaze is alive and well, isn't it? But what does Keir Starmer do? He's concerned about national unity, really, with the right over COVID and beyond. Dan, could you mute people, please, as that are? So he's offered himself quite a few times to Johnson as acting in national unity capacity, and quite blatant about it. And I think Johnson's done quite well to say no, thank you, because that's actually he's a burden rather than something that would help Johnson, and he doesn't need it at the moment, does he? There's lots of reasons why Labour under Starmer, I think, is incredibly unpopular. His position on Brexit will have put off a lot of anti-Brexit Labour voters, I think. He's simply dropped it. He's simply dropped his pro-EU stance, made no attempt to fight around any of the issues when it comes to workers' rights, etc. But he's also not been convincing enough for those who thought Brexit was a bloody good idea. So he doesn't appeal to either of those section of the Labour voters. He's obviously incredibly blunt, etc. But I don't have to tell you that. The only thing he's really done anything about is the anti-Semitism smear campaign. He made it worse by blindly accepting any demands put to him by the Board of Deputies and others in the pro-Zionist lobby. And he's been expanding the purge against the left that, we have to be honest about, sadly was started by and under the Corbyn leadership. And now anybody who dares to speak up on anything really, for example, you know, the one-sided report by the Equality and Human Rights Commission, or even Corbyn's suspension, is suspended. Anything you say gets you suspended these days. Then, of course, there's, you know, for the left, it's been incredibly difficult. Candidates for council seats were suspended just before their confirmation, or simply deselected, and his own preferences installed, like Paul Williams in Hartlepool. Members have been totally sidelined, etc., and made voiceless. And apart from attacking the left, he's done nothing really. He's bland, no vision, not even a caretaker. I mean, that's where I think we on the left agree with much of the bourgeois press, how they see him. He is a really extremely bland leader. Not many Labour Party members will have gotten involved in this campaign and gone out and canvass or anything. It's very deeply inspiring. Probably quite a few won't have voted either, of typical Labour Party voters and supporters. He quite pathetically tried to pin it on Angela Rayner, who was sacked as a chair of the Labour Party, not as a deputy leader. That's an elected position. She can't be sacked from that. Obviously, she's, you know, we would struggle to feel sorry for her, despite the fact that some on the left, like Momentum, supported her really enthusiastically before the election, which was always a really dumb thing to do, because she's not on the left. She's not even pretending. She just didn't pretend at all. In my view, she's a symbol of the failure of the official left, really. You know, trying to get along and sneak through, etc. It doesn't work. It never works. Of course, chiefly Starmer and his allies have tried to blame it on Long Corbyn, which is not very convincing in my view, especially if you look at the results in Hartlepool. In 2017, under Corbyn, Labour won 22,000 votes in Hartlepool, which was 52% of the vote. Now, under Starmer, 8,500 votes, 29% of the vote. Or even, you know, looking at the general election of 2019, what Labour did really well, you know, under Corbyn. That was, of course, before the anti-Semitism smear campaign against Corbyn and the left really took off. And I think that we cannot underestimate the effect this had and still has. And this affected, of course, the election results over the next few years. Had the Corbyn leadership exposed these charges as the false and horrid allegations that they were, and taken on the right in the process, I think we could be in a very different situation today. So we're now in a situation, though, where things can open up again. I mean, that's the positive thing, perhaps, when you know, coming out of a defeat like that. Starmer must go. I think that's quite an obvious thing to demand, and we've been demanding it. Others on the left demanding it. Even people on the right are demanding it. So if he does, if the pressure does get too much also from his allies, and there's a leadership challenge, not a leadership challenge, a new election, that would actually make things easier for the left. You need fewer supports from the fewer nominations from MPs and members of the European Parliament. So it would create a possibility for the left. There is, I think things remain fluid and in flux. So we will still urge comrades, I think, not to leave the party, because things can change like that again. I think we're in a position, in a situation today with COVID and all what goes with it, capitalism in decline, etc., where things can really quickly change. So we'd urge comrades, if you can stomach it, you know, if you haven't been suspended or expelled, obviously stay in the Labour Party to fight. I mean, don't stay just to, you know, go along with what the right's doing. There's little point of that. But as opposed to, you know, the trade union and socialist coalition, which is really an undemocratic front for the Socialist Party or the Socialist Workers' Party and all these organizations, I think the Labour Party remains what Lenin called a bourgeois workers' party. It's got a bourgeois pole and a workers' pole, which is through the union's affiliations. These are two poles that are reflecting the class struggle, and it remains to this day like that. The Corbyn leadership. It is a hugely important arena for the class struggle, which is where it will take place. If there's a class struggle, it will be reflected in the Labour Party. It needs to be fought there as well. We cannot run away from it. It doesn't mean we concentrate solely on the Labour Party, and that would be a mistake as well, especially in this period. But you have to remain flexible with it, and understand, I think, that it remains an important arena. It can become less so at various times, etc. But as I said, things can change rather quickly in a fluid situation as that we are at the moment. This is different from Blair leading the Labour Party. He got in and he, imposed his right-wing agenda. And, if you're a supporter of that, he did it rather well. I mean, he came in and he cleared out the left, and he changed the rules, and he was ruthless about it, and made it, very difficult for the left, obviously, to get a foothold. But Starmer's not even done anything like that, So there is still room for maneuver for us. Having said that, there is, of course, staying in the Labour Party and fighting. There's a danger, of course, that the official Labour left, at least, hasn't learned much from what happened over the last 5 years of the Corbyn leadership. Or it's 6 years ago now, isn't it? And hasn't learned anything that would avoid us making the same mistakes again. And that is a huge problem, I think, even if we're hoping that a left-winger might stand against Corbyn. I think chasing the keys to Downing Street number 10 as the main thing, that's what we have to achieve. It's been a huge problem. It's led, it avoided Corbyn providing real opposition. He was bending over backwards, him and especially John McDonnell, and supported by the Socialist Campaign Group, apart from Chris Williamson, they bend over backwards to try and appease the right. If we just accept this or this demand, this or that demand, perhaps the right will keep quiet and they'll come on board, and then we can get the keys to Downing Street number 10. A fat chance, of course, as we've seen, from day one. Every step back the Corbyn leadership took, every suspension, every expulsion, every lie told over anti-Semitism being ripe in the Labour Party made the right stronger. And, even after evidence, that was unfortunately the strategy pursued right to the end. The official left remained silent on all of this, be it Momentum, Socialist Campaign Group, the Campaign for Labour Party Democracy, etc. There was no real opposition from that official left to what was going on. And unless the left collectively learns from these mistakes, we'll repeat them over and over again. So it's not enough just to have a lefty standing against Starmer, isn't it? It's kind of, have you learned anything from the problems we're faced, etc.? Will you stand up to the witch hunt against the left? Will you avoid this being repeated? In this context, it's interesting that there are currently talks going on of around 25 groups on the Labour left, to which we've been invited as well for the first time ever to something like that, under the heading of Future of the Labour Left. That's a really good thing. I think many of the groups involved are very keen to reform themselves, reform how, for example, the left chooses left candidates through the centre-left grassroots alliance. I think that is an almost universally disputed way to choose candidates, not based on politics or anything, but based on who's in which organization, and I'll give you this, you give me this, so background deals, etc. Comrades know about it. So a lot of groups are not keen on pursuing this and keeping this alive. Having said that, the 2 or 3 groups who are actually in charge of the process are less keen on reforming it, funnily enough, seeing as they are running it with an iron fist and zero democracy. The LLA, Labour Left Alliance, has tried to get involved, get involved in these negotiations of the centre-left grassroots alliance, and we never got a reply for a start, because the setup at the moment is if one organization says no, you're out. You're not allowed to get in. There are no democratic votes. There's vetoes. There's an unelected chair who basically decides or what is discussed and what isn't discussed, etc. It's an outrage, and it's an outrage that is still continuing under the name of Labour Left. So these are things that are up for discussion. I mean, you probably gathered from my talk, I'm not overly optimistic that this will be revolutionized in these discussions, but we're trying our best to put forward a political answer to it, to fight for the transparency, democracy, and political principles that are the basis of why the Labour Left Alliance was formed in the first place. active opposition to the witch hunt and the purges. And I'm talking both waves, the first wave under Corbyn, as well as the second wave. Some organizations make a bit of a division there. They say they're opposing the second wave, but not the first. These are very important for us when we're involved in these discussions. But the rules of these meetings that are currently taking place mean that we can't even properly report about them without being kicked out. So sorry about the, flaky report back, but we at the moment, we and the steering committee believe it's more important we're in there and trying to change things than being reporting every bit of who said what, etc., which is unfortunately was the condition of being allowed in there. Wasn't up for a vote. It was just simply announced. Unfortunately, we've been arguing against it, but that's how it is. So what do we do now? That's a big question, isn't it? So if you're still a Labour Party member, now is a really good time to consider moving a motion of no confidence against Starmer and David Evans. There's no ruling yet from David Evans that says it'll get you suspended if you say anything along that. So use the opportunity. So it could just be a very simple motion. This branch CLP has no confidence in Keir Starmer. That if a lot of branches CLPs do that, that would be quite a good sign. Labour Party conference is taking place this year, 25th, 29th of September in Brighton. Also a really good opportunity to make yourself heard, make the left heard. There's a few things we can do while we're there, despite everything. For example, the first thing is David Evans has to be ratified at conference. So if you're a delegate, if you can become a delegate, please try and become a delegate so you can vote against him. The more delegates from CLPs and unions vote against him, the bigger the impact. And we hear there are a few unions who are considering it, depending on who their general secretary might be at the time, for example. There are a few rule changes by left groups have been put forward. We've actually put them on our website, LLA website, labourleft.org, and we're collating them. I mean, as opposed to much of the rest of the left who are quite keen to bring things together and show what's what and not just say this is our rule change, that's the only good one. There's quite a few decent ones. I mean, none of them like open selection. There's nothing like that that's going to galvanize everything as it did in 2018. And wasn't that a missed opportunity? So Labour and Exile Network, for example, have drafted quite a good one against fast track expulsions, which were introduced under Corbyn, we have to say. Labour Left Alliance have drafted a rule change to allow CLPs to start a leadership challenge, also important. There's also Socialist Appeal have put forward a couple, and CLPD as well. JVL, I think, has just put out a few, but we haven't seen them yet. We'll publish them as well when we see them. You can also move contemporary motions. We've had a link to a motion drafted by the Labour Campaign for Free Speech, which is quite good, which urges the Labour Party to ditch IRA, the fake definition of anti-Semitism, and adopt the Jerusalem Declaration instead, which has its problems as well, but far fewer than IRA. And it would be a huge sign if IRA could be reversed in the Labour Party. So if you're still involved in the Labour Party, these are a few things you can campaign around and would be useful. However, even if you're not a delegate or not a member of the Labour Party anymore, it's still worthwhile coming to Brighton because a few organisations on the left, including the LLA, Labour Against the Witch Hunt, Labour and Exile Network, are in very advanced discussions about hosting a series of events during this year's conference in Brighton. 3 days, basically, we've booked the venue, more details to follow soon. Free speech events, basically. Resistance to what's going on in the Labour Party and discussing how we can fight back. So it's 3 days of a festival of the left, really, during Labour Party conference in Brighton. It's always nice and sunny there, so we would urge comrades to make arrangements to come to Brighton and fight back rather than be demoralized. Easy to say. I mean, these are not great times for the Labour left, but there's still, as I said, still everything is in flux. Things are still fluid politically if we learn some lessons from what's been going on. Thanks.
Thanks, Tina, for that excellent detailed analysis of things and the information provided. I'll just say on rule change motions, the deadline is the 11th of June, 12 noon, in fact, on the 11th of June. So obviously, given the time frames for getting things through branches and CLPs, we need to start getting them through very soon. I see people have got their hands up. Thanks for that. So I'll bring you in order. Matthew Jones, please.
Hi, comrades. No, thanks to Tina for that introduction. It was very useful. I think when things are obviously moving quite rapidly at the moment, and I think the thing is we also should always bear in mind the international position. I mean, you know, in Europe certainly it's pretty dark times. You know, with the election of the PP supported by the fascists in Madrid, and the move. The support by the Spanish army for a putsch, including officers talk about killing 26 million Spaniards, and again in France, the French army officers issuing a proclamation saying that they want a putsch, you know, again supported by Le Pen and the fascists. You know, so I mean, things are, in those terms, you know, things are moving, you know, in fairly aggressive ways. I think that. Things as far as I can see, I mean, Starmer's done. You know, Starmer, of course, by failing to deliver Hartlepool and by by the usual methods, means that he's now so weakened that essentially he's done. You know, he's no longer really leader. He's now having to take orders. You know, this is why he's sacking people around him. And so on, and the right wing are now in charge. The reason that he's still there is because obviously they don't want a contest, you know. But effectively he's done. I think that then of course what's going to happen, and you can see this by the pronouncements of various of the right wing that they don't want to move still more against the left. You know, speed up the clear out of the left. You know. And talk of obviously attacks on the unions as well. So, you know, in those terms, it's going to get hotter. I think that you know, you can see, you know, they want their placemen in there. The reshuffle, of course, I think what you're going to get is a whole lot of really right wing people like Reeves and so on and so forth are going to get the senior jobs, and the people who have originally been around Starmer are going to get thrown out or eased into other bits which are less significant. So, I mean, in those terms, it heats up the confrontation and the effort to attack the left and move the thing to the right, which of course is you know, basically will make it even more the case that they're trailing the Tories, and they'll have even less of an appeal to the working class and less of a means of distinguishing themselves. You know, they're also intent. I mean, Starmer's basically announced their intent on junking, you know, anything they've got left of the 2019 manifesto and stating all sorts of other nonsense, you know, presumably again in pursuit of the Tories. So I mean, the thing is that really the left then has to come out and state, you know, that it does have an alternative, and it isn't going to put up with the sort of methods that are going to be applied by these people, and that you know, it's necessary that the left should, you know, and any, you know, that we need to be able to appeal more broadly to the working class, you know, under conditions in which obviously, you know, Johnson is pursuing nakedly an attack on the public sector again, you know, saying, okay, well, the NHS is only worth 1%, you know, whereas we can give out billions to our friends, which of course is a function of the Tory government, and that the rest of the public sector will get nothing. You know, and that's nakedly just an effort to slap people in the face. And the question will be, I mean, what is the response?
Please, Matthew.
Yeah, I think the other thing is going to be the two union elections that are currently taking place will be critical. One, obviously, in my union in Unison, you know, which I think was important, if the possibility of the left actually winning that, and again in Unite, which you know, those two. And the actual industrial response to the working class will be quite critical to the next period. Thanks.
Thanks, Matthew. Yeah, there's quite a few people wanting to speak, so try and limit it to about 2.5 minutes. I'll just say time when you need to sort of wrap up, please. Okay, Jim Cook, please, next.
Thank you. Thanks, Tina. I'm getting messages now. Tina's saying about staying in and fighting. I've said on Facebook and so on several times, Starmer wants you to leave, so stay. Now, on the other hand, though, I don't think that the anti-Semitism campaign was the main thing that cost Hartlepool and the councils and so on. It was Brexit. It was Cameron came up with this idea to sort out his backbenchers. It failed. Labour piled in on both sides of what is basically a bourgeois discussion. You know, who gives a toss whether it's Boris Johnson, Theresa May, Barnier, or whatever running things. You know, we're in a class war, not an electoral campaign. And as far as I could make out before 2019, with comrades in my Labour Party branch campaigning, their thing wasn't about anti-Semitism. They were being told on the door that Corbyn was seen as weak. And of course, he was weak on anti-Semitism and he was weak on Brexit. He caved on those. And who are we going to, if we're going to challenge Starmer, who's going to do it? You know, who is there in the Parliamentary Labour Party who's any bloody use at all? Now we have to fight for a Labour Party that has a socialist programme that can appeal to people, not a bit of manoeuvring here and there. To, you know, what has been the programme of the Labour Party for the last however many years? Thatcher came in with neoliberalism. Virtually every government in the world, of course, is jumped on that, including the Labour Party. Tony Blair, of course. And in passing, one might note that Hartlepool had Peter Mandelson as a Conservative MP for 12 years. But you know what has been offered in its place by the left, generally neo-Keynesianism, i.e., let's go back to the 70s. Yeah, sorry, nearly finished. Let's see if there's anything urgent I need to say. No, that'll do. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Steve Freeman, please.
Thanks. I echo, sorry, I'm unmuting myself, I echo a bit of what Jim said. I think, look, first thing we should look at is actually the three elections going on. There's one in Wales where the situation is different. Then there's another one in Scotland where that situation is different. Then there's one in England. And we have a habit in England of talking about the whole country as if it's England and not actually realizing we're doing that. We're talking about what went on in England. And the fact it's a completely different ballgame in Wales and in Scotland has to be part of our analysis of what's going on. And it needs to tell us that the political system in this country is breaking down under our noses. And therefore we have to question whether it's just the case that Corbyn had the right policies but was a poor leader. Starmer had nearly more or less the same programme because they all talked about what happened in 1945 and the need to restore that. Starmer's idea was, I'll be a bit more right-wing, but I'll be a much better leader because I'm a knight of the realm and I'm a lawyer and I can appeal to the middle classes and so on and so forth. Say more or less the same politics, more to the right, obviously. And the policy's okay. If we'd a bit lefter, it would work. And maybe this policy and this programme is completely and utterly out of date. And that's why Labour doesn't know how to pitch itself, doesn't know what message to. It's something to do with nationalism. And the Tories are better at English nationalism than the Labour Party is, because the Labour Party doesn't know how to do it. So Starmer sort of comes out with his union flag and waves that a bit and then drinks some beer in a pub or something, and he thinks that'll do the business. So I think, look, we've only got 2 minutes. I think we have to think much more radically about the nature of the period that we're now in. We're in a period of degeneration when we have to have it, when our democracy is collapsing. And if we don't address those things, then we're not going to get anywhere at all. We have to think much more strategically. We have to have a vision of the future, which clearly Starmer doesn't have. Booting him out and getting another, I don't know, you know, somebody like him, you know, maybe a woman or a younger person or whatever it is, that's not the answer, you know. So we have to have a much more deeper thought about what the message is coming to us from this election. I'll stop there because we only got a couple of minutes, but I want to just challenge the view that it's just a matter of swapping leaders and getting him out and getting another one in. It's a much deeper problem than that, about what's happening in Scotland, Wales, and in England, which again is different. I'll leave it there. I did leave it there because I just thought I better stop. I'm going to carry on talking a bit longer if I'd realised you.
I was muted, sorry about that.
Sorry about that. Okay. Better mute
Who's
myself.
next, Dan?
Andrew Kirkland.
Hi there, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Right, good. Yeah, I was reading in the announcement for this meeting that Starmer should stand down, allowing a new leadership contest to take place. If a left-winger is prepared to stand for the leadership on the basis that they would take on the right in and outside the party, this could very quickly open things in the Labour movement once again. I disagree totally. I think I'm more in line with what Tina said in her introduction. To be clear, taking on the right means confronting and exposing the anti-Semitism lie. If they're not going to do that, then they're not taking on the right. So at this point, there's no point in calling for a new leadership contest until we've got such a candidate who's willing to take on the right. Instead of talking about a new leadership contest, we should be clear about the kind of Labour Party we want, and let's set about campaigning to achieve it. We cannot support left-wingers who rely on right-wing MPs. This was Corbyn's downfall. He refused to confront the right. To be Labour Prime Minister, he needed their votes in the House of Commons. Electing a new left leader, a Jeremy Corbyn Mark II, will fix nothing. We'll just repeat the sorry saga of the last 5 years over again. We need to thrash out a programme to transform the party to represent the working class. This means removing all the right-wing careerist parasites who use Labour as their meal ticket. It also means removing all the apparatchiks in the party machine, from David Evans down to all the regional staff. It means making the conference sovereign. The MPs must be accountable to the NEC and the NEC accountable to conference. And it means democratising the party and all the affiliates, especially the trade unions. Labour must become the party of the working class, not the party of the trade union bureaucrats. That is why that is the way to get a Labour Party with socialist policies and socialist MPs. Electing a new leader without that agenda will be worse than useless. And finally, I just want to say that we have to be open. If these meetings are taking place, if we're going to discuss the stitch up with other left groups in Labour, then we need to be open. We need to report the findings of our discussions to our members and to the members of the Labour Party. We must publish the details in the minutes. We need a culture of no secrets on the left. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Ken Syme, please, next.
Thank you, Dan. Just a brief comment based on my own experiences in Cheltenham, where I stood as a borough and county council candidate. I didn't get in on either part, which is unsurprising since Cheltenham hasn't elected a Labour councillor for decades. Before the Iraq war, we did have Labour councillors. When Blair went to war in Iraq, many in Cheltenham Labour resigned from the party, and electorally speaking, we've never recovered. But the point I wanted to make was that the significant thing from a Cheltenham Labour perspective in the recent elections was that in every instance bar one, and I'm talking about 30 separate elections, the Green Party came above us in the vote. Now that's never happened. We've always at least managed to beat the Greens. Why did the Greens succeed? Because despite the fact that they, in my view, overlook the fact that you will not get climate justice until you have social justice. They have a program which appears to send a clear message, which appeals to people because it has some currency. So there is an urgency about this. Those of us who can still tolerate remaining in the Labour Party need to work hard to change it to something that will regain a level of appeal, particularly among the younger generation. Because once they've drifted away to the Greens or to the Liberal Democrats, it will be much more difficult to get them back, and it will be even more difficult to get any kind of basis for a Labour government. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Great time that. Stan Keeble.
We are.
There you
Yeah,
go.
sorry, I'll mute myself. Yeah, no, this is, what's the difference between 2017 general election and 2019 general election? You know, was it, well, Corbyn was in charge in both of them in principle, wasn't he? But I think it's not the case. I don't think that the difference was the anti-Semitism campaign, but the difference was Boris and Brexit, wasn't it? That in the 2019 one, Boris came in as Prime Minister during 2019, if I got it right, and he came in to get Brexit done, and he got Brexit done, and the Brexit voters have just voted Tory, haven't they, in the recent 2021 local elections. So I think that's the key issue. This is all to do with the referendum. I looked this up yesterday when I looked up the dates and things, because it was in the manifesto when in the 2015 general election, Ed Miliband, that was Ed Miliband's last moment. You know, he ceased to be leader the day after those May elections in 2015, and then Corbyn came in September after his interesting leader campaign. But the manifesto in 2015 already said that Labour was committed to is following Cameron, you know, committed to a referendum, and Corbyn didn't change that. He should have changed it. With the Labour Party Marxists, we campaigned then for a boycott of the referendum, because referendums are bad news for the working class. They divide. What we stand for, of course, should be a representative democracy, like in Scotland at the moment. If the majority of Scottish MPs in the Scottish Parliament vote in favour of independence, then that's what they should get. It shouldn't be necessary to have a referendum for it. It representative democracy says that's the question, so they haven't got the right to leave. Actually, it's democratic deficit. They wanted me to finish already. I've barely begun. But the result of the referendum it's divided the working class, it's divided the left as well, and it's divided the Labour Party, and it's divided society as a whole, and it's a disaster. And we've got the lowest ever level of class consciousness now, and we need to deal with that. So I agree with the comrades who've said it's no good just changing the leader. We've got some fundamental work to do, and we're starting at a very low ebb. So we need to rebuild the left on a principled basis. And the LLA is not doing that at the moment, especially keeping its secrets about what discussions it's having with the official left. It's almost like we're going to become like them, isn't it? We need to be open so that when they throw us out, we need to be able to say, well, we said this is what we were standing on. We were demanding openness and demanding what principles there should be for a common slate. Okay, that's it.
Thanks very much. Pam Bromley.
Yeah, hi everybody. Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to comment a great deal about the election results. I think they're utterly depressing, but it just shows. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh yeah, there's a box still up. Tell me to unmute. You know, it's just a sign of the chaos we've descended into since the defeat of Jeremy Corbyn. So Yeah, but what I wanted to speak on, just on something Tina was talking about, which is this invite we've had to join in with the other left groups, you know, after, you know, a long period of time with them pushing us away, which of course is a great initiative. But what I wanted to say really was, I don't think we should be putting all our eggs in one basket. And I've just posted into the chat a motion that was passed at the last organising group, which calls on the LLA to campaign for a conference of the left, with the aim of just going beyond just a gathering of the existing groups, but bringing in wider groups of unaffiliated Corbyn supporters. I think it's very important that we carry that out, so that we're, I suppose, you know, keeping our options open. So I just wanted to draw attention to that.
Thanks, Pam. Ollie Perkins, please.
Yeah, hi. So I'm having some technical difficulties with my video. I had to switch to the laptop, but hopefully you can hear me fine. Okay, I was very sort of taken aback by an email I got last night from the LLA saying, terrible election result, Starmer must go. Well, that's the sort of thing you hear from from the right, isn't it? And likewise with Tina's opening, very frustrating, you know, Starmer out, out, out. Well, it's the sort of thing, you know, I would sort of expect on those awful SWP demonstrations against whatever Tory government's in. Theresa May out, out, out. Boris Johnson out, out, out. Well, who are we going to put in? Yeah. It's been said before, you know, Lisa Nandy or Ed Miliband or Andy Burnham. Gosh, no. It's just silly to be talking about get rid of the right without addressing the serious problem on the left, which is we've got no competent answer ourselves. So that's just on that. I would agree with the comrades who said Brexit is the clear elephant in the room, and comrades have highlighted the 2019 general election. Obviously, Corbyn was in charge for both 2017 and 2019, and the specific factors about 2017 was obviously Theresa May's incompetent. We can all agree and laugh on that. But 2019, Boris Johnson, Dominic Cummings, you know, get Brexit done. Well, clearly that very much struck a tone because you could see the clear divergence in the results there. And so we can say, okay, Starmer bad. Look at these latest election results. Well, it's exactly the same in 2019. Steve Freeman brought up about the different nature of the results and that across the United Kingdom. Quite right, yeah. Scotland has got this problem of nationalism. Well, that's a historic failure of the Labour left to tail electoral politics and etc. To seem more electable. It's created the whole problem of Scotland, and hence its complete destruction in Scotland. The 6 counties, crisis of unionism with the border poll and the Northern Ireland protocols, etc. I would just say in closing, because we've got a silly, stupidly small amount of time, the lessons that the Labour left must learn. Well, here's 3. Electoralism, constantly tailing what the media is saying and trying to seem more electable, even if that means accepting David Cameron's stupid referendum that was about Tory backbenchers. Sorry, lesser evilism and unity at all costs, hence the problem of these unpublished minutes or what have you, these unity talks with the rest of the left. Why aren't we hearing about them? Please be open. Come on.
Thanks, Ollie. Just a point on timings. If I'd have let people just go as long as they like, you wouldn't have got a chance to speak probably, Ollie. So we're just trying to give everybody an opportunity to have.
Well, I've got all day. It's a serious topic.
Thank you. Right, next please is Tony Griffin, please.
Hiya. Just a bit of a sort of contrast to what Ken was saying earlier. I did get in on Thursday. This isn't about me. I'm just saying in Rotherham, where we saw 20, the Tories went from 0 to 20 in a ward that hasn't had a Labour councillor for 24 years. And I did that on an unashamedly left ticket in the most or the least deprived ward in the whole of Rotherham. It's a bit of a plea, really. You know, that worked. Something worked. I know most of this meeting is a sort of reflection on what went wrong on Thursday. But I think we have to start saying, well, what can we do that's right? And I think we have to be say yes, the leadership matters, but you know, bottom up, that's what we should be about. What are you doing? What are other people doing locally that can add to the things that we obviously manage to do here locally, that we can bring together, either in meetings like this. I'm not suggesting factionalizing things, but I'd love to have some time with anybody else here, anybody else with a similar view to mine, and I'm sure many others who are now in a position of being borough councillors, county councillors, whatever it might be. What can we build from that that we can actually then demonstrate to our leadership? So we're not just going to a leadership and saying, you're rubbish, we need you out, we need someone else. We're actually saying, this works, that works, now take it up and run with it. And if it works locally, it can work on the big stage as well. So if there is any scope within the organisation of the LLA to assist and be a bit of a catalyst to growing that group, if it has to be a group, or just diverting our attentions towards those more positive things, let's do it.
Thanks, Tony, and congratulations for your election. Okay, I've got a couple more speakers, Tarsam and Tony, and then I'll bring Tina back in, round up this session before we move on to the second part about trade unions. So Tarsam, please.
Thank you, comrades. My take on it is that Starmer's doing what was in his remit. Starmer's remit was basically, Capital was not happy with the Labour Party under Corbyn because it actually challenged it. And since 2008, as we all know, Capital's been in crisis, and it was quite dangerous having, you know, anyone get close to number 10 like that. So Starmer's doing exactly what he's supposed to do. His job was to bury the 2019 manifesto, neutralise the membership, and make himself friendly, make the Labour Party friendly to business and the media again. And I think on his own terms, they're not disappointed. The way we should look at this is, you know, when Starmer says we lost the trust of the people, if you substitute people for capital every time he uses the word people or British public, and you can say the same for Johnson, you get the true picture of what they're actually about. So he's lost the trust of capital, and the big crisis in Labour Party is that how do we win it back? So after this, I think they're going to have to do something radical, maybe expel Corbyn or maybe expel some unions or something, just to say to capital, look, please let us in. And the chilling implication of this is because the Blairites in the Labour Party think you don't win elections by a democratic people. The people don't elect you. It's the establishment capital elite that elect you. It's the media, it's the you know, business, the bankers. And that's the chilling thing we're up against. Now, the Tories, what the Tories are doing, capital is in crisis, and they understood there was going to be more inequality and there'd be class, potential for class consciousness and struggle. So Brexit was an opportunity for the Tories to say to the working class, align yourselves, instead of aligning yourselves horizontally with class solidarity, align yourself vertically with British imperial white supremacy. And that's what we got through Brexit, and it's carrying on now. I mean, this is, we've all seen it, the amount of ubiquitous flags everywhere. I mean, I hear now they're even flying flags in inner city London schools. And so this is just going to escalate now. The Tories are going to carry on this line, saying to the working class, look, think about your imperial nostalgia. And it's all delusional, but it's all about making them emotionally connect to some meaning, because they know that Britain is actually in decline and capital is on the verge of, hopefully on the verge of some collapse. And they just, anyway.
Thanks a lot, Tarsam. Finally then, Tony Greenstein, please.
Okay, thank you, comrades. Sorry, I came rather late to the table, as it were, so I may have missed some offerings, not least from Tina. Just really a few random thoughts. Socialists are internationalists, and therefore we should not simply see what happens and what happened on Thursday in isolation. I mean, there is a collapse of social democracy throughout Europe. In France, the Socialist Party has virtually disappeared, so too Italy. Germany's SPD, the oldest, the strongest, the Social Democratic Party is in crisis. Same in Sweden. So, I mean, we have to look at it in a certain context. And if you have a look at my blog, you'll see I've done an analysis of 31 red wall seats going back to 1945. In my view, the figures are really clear. The decline in Labour vote in what's called the red wall seats did not start in 2015 or 17 with Brexit. On the contrary, it's gone back to 1945. In that election, for example, in Dennis Skinner's seat, Bolsover, and that is just one example, the Labour candidate got over 80%, 4 out of 5 people voted. What was it last time? I think it was 37%, 1 in 3 voters, and that was replicated throughout the North. That is a deep political crisis which needs explaining in terms of the working class's own structure, its own ability to fight back the disappearance of whole industries, etc. I therefore completely disagree with sorry, I've forgotten his name, Stan, when he says that Brexit is the key. Brexit is not the key. Brexit is the symptom of a political decay and decline. It's a turn away from class politics, if you like, to nationalist politics, to scapegoatism, to actually seeing someone who's even poorer than you, the migrant workers, being responsible for the position you're in. It is a deep political crisis. But Brexit, which was a right-wing project, anyone who thinks as Alexit is living in cloud cuckoo land, was really, as I say, a symptom of the crisis we face. But also 2017 proved it was possible to overcome that crisis. The difference between 2017 and 2019 was in 2017, the anti-Semitism crisis, allegations, had only just begun. The right wing had failed to unseat Corbyn through an ill-chosen challenge via Owen Smith. By 2019, they had coordinated their campaign and they had destroyed Corbyn. I mean, Corbyn was politically a wreck by 2019. So there are lessons we should draw, but I don't think they're the ones that people have actually mentioned to date. But I do advise people, have a look at the tables I've drawn up, okay, because they actually tell a story, which I think we need to take to heart. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tony. I'm going to just give another couple of contributions a chance. Tina, can you come in at the end or before?
Could I speak now? Actually, I think it's I want to reply to a few things.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm not sure how to make myself. Where am I? Oops, here. Sorry. Yes. You know, Starmer out. Is there any point calling that when the left is still in the position and the political quagmire is now, and you know, Labour left has still not learned the lessons yet? I think it does, because a leadership contest, like all things that, you know, things change all the time and things open up. I mean, you know, think back 6 years when a certain Jeremy Corbyn stood for the Labour leadership. You know, it was his turn. That was just the way why he got on the you know, he was put forward by the left, because they're rotating it for decades. They will put somebody from the left forward, and suddenly things kicked off quite dramatically with 500, you know, Labour Party swelling to 500,000 people, over 300,000 lefties joining, etc. Of course, there's a political opening, isn't it? You know, if there is a possibility for things to move and for the left to make an impact, you use it. So if you can't see that there are possibilities with something like a leadership, elections, etc., that, you know, and then the political possibilities that opens up, then I don't think you're much of a politician. That doesn't mean we have illusions, or we're sowing illusions in, you know, whoever might stand. I mean, there are a couple of decent ones, MPs who could possibly do something decent if they grow a backbone, like Andrew Bergen and Sarah Sultana, who's quite good, but she's very new and probably not going to do it quite yet. She's also never replying to us, which is, I know why, etc. But it is, it does say something about the kind of backbone these comrades have at the moment. But still, there's things can open up, things can change quite quickly. So, the key is we don't sow illusions. We're not saying these are wonderful MPs, etc. We're still openly critical, and I presume that's why you're still involved in the Labour Left Alliance, because that's what we're fighting for. Not quite as useless as you make us sound, Stan and Andy and the other comrade. So in terms of these left meetings, I think I've broken the rules already by just telling you that these are happening, because that's not allowed either. It's ridiculous. I mean, we were invited. It's sponsored by, I think I can say that, and it's sponsored by Don't Leave Organize, which is, I don't know who's running it these days even. It's all very murky, to be honest. It's not the groups that set it up in the first place, as I understand it. So we got invited to it, and then the microphones get switched off, the chat is switched off. You get told these are Chatham House rules. You're not allowed to say who said what or something like that. I can't even tell you I understand these rules properly. They're idiotic. No vote on it. It's basically, these are the rules. And if you report whatever who said, then that's probably a reason that is a reason to get you kicked out of these meetings. So we've argued against it, but there's no point to challenge this, because this is the basis of these meetings. We've argued against them, etc. But I just think, and I have thought about that, because I'm not very optimistic that much good is going to come out of it. I say, because chiefly for the reason the groups who are in charge of some of the things that are going on the official Labour left have understandably very little interest in reforming a process that they control. I mean, why would they? So unless the rest of the Labour left actually gets together and exercises some pressure on these one or two slightly bigger groups, but not that bigger anymore. I have to say, some of the, you can guess who the big ones are, is Momentum and CLPD. They are the ones that are not exactly keen on reform, and that's the new Momentum, I should say, new Momentum, and not quite as new. So but I think in general, I think the Labour Left Alliance is one of the key reasons, actually, our existence and the role we've played in the NEC elections, by having open hustings, political hustings, asking questions of the candidates, putting questions to them at political platforms. It was deeply uncomfortable to much of the organized Labour left, the official Labour left. And that's become quite clear in these discussions, that part of the reason these meetings are taking place now is because of what we've been doing and the pressure we've exerted on the process of left candidates. And we didn't just take it, these are the left candidates, okay, let's just everybody vote for them. No, we have no idea what these candidates stand for. And so, as part of the reason that Roger Silverman did so well in the NEC elections is now part of the reason why these talks are taking place. So we've made a huge difference already. I mean, they say they're not very reform, not very keen on reform, but I think it's important we're there, and it's important we use the little space there is to talk about it. If we now go ahead and just tell you, who said what in these meetings, what exactly has changed? Nothing at all has changed. We get kicked out and they continue to do something without our input. It has to be said, most of the opposition has come from us. We're the ones trying to put forward alternatives, proposals for a Labour left conference has come from us, etc. So things are happening because of us being there. So I think it's much better we're in there and can move things slightly. Of course, if things get out of hand, and we will start reporting about it if nothing changes at all, or if any reform efforts are being stifled, then that stuff will come out in the open. But at the moment, there's still a lot to play for, and it's a crucial time, very politically fluid. So I think it's hugely important we're in there and not get thrown out just to for the sake of reporting every dot and comma. So far, there isn't really much to report on.
Okay. Well, thanks, Tina. Okay, I think we've got a bit of time to bring in the last couple that have got their hands up there. Christine, I've just been bringing people in the order that people put their hands up, that's all. So, Christine, go ahead.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, I'm very glad you're in there, Tina, and I think one of the purposes of the kind of organisations that you and I are in is as a kind of memento mori to the left, remind them we're still here and remind them what we're actually doing in our communities. I wanted to talk about what happened in South Thanet, in the apparently unwinnable seat of Broadstairs, where we had, it's been a Tory stronghold for forever. We had a Labour candidate for the Kent County Council, Aaron Ralph, who's an ex-asylum seeker. So, and he's a fantastic pillar of our local community and of the left. They tried to not get him selected, but he was. And he just worked so hard with absolutely no help from the National Party, no funds available, not allowed access to organise so he could even remind people to go and vote. But he flung himself into volunteering for local campaigns. He was working on the food bank during lockdown. He's been volunteering at the vaccination centre. He's been on furlough from the hospitality industry, so he doesn't earn much anyway. But he's known locally and he's very, very popular locally, and people know him as a kind of saintly figure trying to say thank you to the country that took him in when he sought asylum. And it's that kind of campaign that is going to get people on the left noticed. And it's the kind of thing that the left should be doing, just fling yourself into local stuff. Aram increased the Labour vote by a huge percentage, and he really frightened the Tory incumbent. But maybe lots of Labour people didn't vote for him because he didn't have a chance to email them, and they're all pissed off with what happened in the party because of me being chucked out, for example, and my partner Norman, who was chair of South Thanet, being suspended. People are very, very fed up with what's happening, but you have to demonstrate, you have to get the story out, you have to tell them what's actually happening on a local level. Aaron didn't get elected, but he had loads of people who are Tories, and even the ex-chair of UKIP in this area said he was going to vote for him because he thinks he's a good bloke. So getting involved in the grassroots stuff and the local campaigns is going to make a huge difference to the Labour vote and to the image of the left across the party, I imagine, if we can do it. But I'm glad you're in there spying for us, Tina. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Sorry, I was muted again. The last contribution for this session is Ross, and then we'll be moving on to the trade union section. Go ahead, Ross.
Can you hear me okay?
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I'm rushing about a bit. I'm in the car, and I want to definitely be around for the trade union part, but I may have to go off earlier. And I think really sort of what I want to say sort of segues into that a little bit, because we have to remember that with all our talks, Labour, what the Labour Party is, it has, since its inception, the Labour Party has been, really in my mind, it was set up to curtail any radical movements that were emerging both in the UK, England, Scotland, Wales, or globally, like in Russia. I think we have to shift our analysis from this idea that a lot of people still think the Labour Party is a virtuous thing and there's some bad guys in it who are just sabotaging things, and this conspiratorial idea. Well, actually, it's the other way around. We are the fifth columnists in the Labour Party as socialists. Now, some of the things have been said today, I kind of agree and disagree with. I mean, I think obviously as socialists, we're anti-fascist, anti-imperialist. This is the tradition that's gone through all through working class histories. Communists of all nationalities are being tortured and murdered because of you know, it's a lifelong battle basically between communism and fascism, one way or the other. But I don't really think the Brexit thing, without, and I know this is an old thing, but of course it's the elephant in the room again. I mean, yeah, this isn't a crisis of moral degeneracy. This isn't a crisis of people being as individually being. It's a democratic degeneracy that's happened, and we're not going to sort of. I don't think an analysis of things as a kind of people being racist and stupid is what's happening. And I'm not saying particularly anyone here has said that, but what I am getting at is that people sort of on the left or the liberal left mix up in their ideas about, oh, the mainstream media's to blame, not that we can do a lot about that, but also at the same time somehow think that buy into this. I mean, if the mainstream media is to blame, then why do you think everybody who voted Brexit was a right-wing market trader that the BBC put on telly? You know, most people who are working class, how can all those Labour voters in Hartlepool be simultaneously Tory right-wing people in 2021 when they were socialist Brexiteer traditional Labour voters in 2017? Don't make any sense. So that's what I was going to say, really. So really, I think moving into the next section, I think we have to think about broadening this out, because the Labour Party is not going to deliver us democratically. We can play the game however we want. We have to build a movement outside of Parliament, extra parliamentary activity through the unions, through and not just some sort of Howard Beckett legislative idea, an idea that's actually a grassroots idea where we get things through the unions by organising without paid officials. We get things by not doing things, by not expecting legislation to do it for us in the Labour Party, because surely by now we know it's not happening on its own. It's both, basically. Thank you.
Thank you, Ross. And thanks everybody for your contributions. That was a good session. It's good to hear all these different opinions, and that's what these meetings are for. So thank you very much. Right, I'm going to hand the chair over to Carol, who will also be contributing to the next session, the introduction with Pam Bromley on the trade union stuff. Over to you, Carol. Thank you.
We transferred.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, we're moving on to the trade union section here, which has been pretty busy over the past couple of months. So I'm going to hand over to Pam, going to spotlight Pam, so that she can chat to us about the trade, about the Unite, particularly the Unite elections.
Oh, thanks very much, Carol. Yeah, we decided that we'd split the report between myself and Carol, and then, but as Ross is here, perhaps at the end he could be invited to speak on Unison, because he has been organising some Unison stuff very successfully. So just before I get on to the main item of business, or the main job we've just done at the moment, just to talk about the trade union groups really growing very well. I've noticed quite a lot of the people that come to the meetings are here today, you know, which I think is testament to the way people are motivated to get involved. We meet fortnightly on a Monday, but in between we have caucuses, which I'll talk about in a minute. There is a meeting of the Unite caucus tomorrow in the trade union group the following week, and I do advertise it on the Facebook pages, but we're looking at setting up a better mailing system in the hope that more people will come along to the meetings. So it's just a general invite. If you're a trade union member, please do come along. The only thing to say is that we have had a lot of people trying to join the Facebook page, and we do have to insist that people are members of the LLA to join the Facebook page. So I spent quite a bit of time sending messages to people asking them to join. So it's great you're inviting people, but that is the condition of joining. So we have the meetings amongst the members. We also have a few open meetings, and we hope with the open meetings that we will recruit towards the LLA. That is our aim. So I think the work's very important because of the crisis in the Labour Party, that people are starting to move back towards the unions now. There's been an increase in small-scale disputes, and there's been some successes like the Manchester bus drivers who won the hire and fire dispute. The other point of trade union group is it's the importance of cross-union organisation as well. So what I hope what we do in the trade union group, we look at, you know, it's a way of expressing solidarity. We support each other, we learn from each other, and we share experiences, and that's extremely valuable. So what else? Okay, so I was just going to talk about the caucuses. We've got caucuses now for Unison, Unite and NEU, which is starting to get going. We've had a couple of people interested in a GMB caucus, so if anybody would like to help set that up, just sort of get in touch and we'll help you to get going. But I mean, I think the overall thing is that the group is growing, you know, and the interested in trade unions growing, and I think there's some real solidarity developing. So anyway, the main piece of work we've done at the moment, of course, is the Unite hustings. We started off in the Unite group, but nobody had any idea at all which candidates to support for General Secretary. So we organised a set of hustings, with 2 or 3 discussions about it, and then we had the hustings. The hustings people invited to the hustings with Beckett, the 3 left candidates, Beckett, Sharon Graham and Steve Turner. Unfortunately, only Beckett could be bothered to turn up. The other 2 didn't think it was important, I think. And Beckett had the floor. He was very, very good, and he's finished up winning the hustings we held with 256 votes, which LLA have now agreed we will back Beckett for General Secretary leader. So I mean, through that process of having the Unite caucus, we did come to a conclusion from having absolutely no idea at the beginning. So it just shows the importance of discussing. Just on the vote of the LLA husting, there is probably confusion about the result. When Carol and I looked at the result, we thought some of it was very suspect because we'd had more than 200 votes cast within a few minutes just before the poll ended for one of the candidates. I won't say which one. So we did look into it. We found that a lot of these votes were from ISPs that appeared to be suspect. So at first we tried to estimate what the true vote was, and that's what you saw at first. However, the steering group then decided that members had a right to see the full result, which I've now sent round. So that is available somewhere. Just think there's anything else I wanted to say, but it shows a different sort of vote for one of the candidates. However, it doesn't alter the fact that Howard Beckett was the overall winner. So we're now urging comrades to get to the branches and to, nominate Howard Beckett and try and get into a situation where there is only one left candidate standing in the event that Coyne gets on the ballot paper. So I'll leave it at that. Carol's going to talk about the other 2 caucuses, and then maybe Ross would like to say a few words.
Right, thanks very much. We have formed an NEU caucus, and we only had 1 meeting so far, but at that meeting, Kirsty Payton and Tracy Maguire told us about the victimisation that they've experienced at their 2 academies due to their being reps for NEU and for fighting for their members. Tracy Maguire was fighting against redundancy notices given to 10 of her members. And then, of course, she fought to keep schools safe in the COVID crisis by urging members to send Section 44 letters in, saying that the teachers would not be prepared to work in unsafe conditions. Kirsty Payton did the same. And they've been victimised by their schools. Tracy is now on a redundancy list. She put an appeal hearing through, but that failed as well. Kirsty Payton has also, I think, failed in her attempt to have the disciplinary overturned. But these are absolutely victims of victimisation. They are being thrown out of their academies because they are strong union members who are doing everything they can to fight for their members. And Kirsty Payton also gave us a very, very moving description of what academisation is doing to education in this country. People were totally shocked at the meeting. They had no idea what's going on there. And so what we've done now, we're trying to set up an education session where Kirsty Payton and Tracy Maguire and Carol Buxton will be speaking on the effects that academisation is having on our education system. So that'll be coming up. We're trying to organise a date when everyone can be there, but that's the next thing that the NEU is going to, the NEU Caucus is going to organise in liaison with the LLA. The Unison has really taken, the Unison Caucus has really taken off as well. Ross has done a great job there in liaising with Paul Holmes. We've had 2 excellent meetings at which Paul Holmes has attended, and Ross has been doing lots of work behind the scenes as well on the upcoming NEC elections for Unison. So I think I'd like to bring Ross in now, if we may, for him to, if he's there and available, for him to talk about the Unison Caucus.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep. Yep, we can hear you.
Sorry about it. He's clashed a little bit. I mean Prestwich, which is a big, quite a lot of controversy around the recent general elections. And anyway, I digress. But yeah, thanks for letting me speak about Unison. For me, I'm enthusiastic about Unison because even though we all know that Unison has always been held, you know, it's the biggest union, and unsurprisingly, it's always been led by the right wing with Dave Prentice and the continuity candidate now in Andrew McNay. But what is really encouraging about Unison is that there's a real energy around a grassroots campaign. And in comparison to Unite, despite whatever people like Howard Beckett saying wonderful, wonderful things, these people, as we know, are all the 3 left candidates are bureaucrats. And there's, you know, I'm sure they can defend themselves, but there's questionable things that have happened in the past with open selection, etc. In regard to that. Now, what's great about the Unison left is that even though it might, I think the United left in Unite has a bit of a top-down kind of closed shop feel, perhaps, whereas even though the Unison left has it caused a split with the Paul Holmes grassroots candidate general secretary by being so broad, and arguably it's a bit in disarray as an organised left. The actual NEC campaign is really organised, and if we can get the vote out, we could have we could win this really quite. I shouldn't be saying this. You shouldn't tempt fate, you know. But I think if we really push this, we could win. And then you've got a left NEC who can really challenge you know, the right-wing machinery, and that's really significant in any Labour movement. And I think really what this moves on to is just the idea again that I'm in Labour Left Alliance for the same reason everyone else, that I believe that these things are not either or, but we do have to. It's imperative that we well, I think the Labour left and people in the Labour Party have such a focus on the short-term electoralism. Everything lurches from one internal election, whether it's local, county, general elections. We're just always on the back foot, you know, fighting these things internally. And whilst all this stuff needs to happen, I just think that if we look to countries like Bolivia, Venezuela, you know, these countries don't just get what they want easily at all. They need an organised movement outside of parliamentary politics, and to purely think that we're going to get this through legislation, through getting a Labour government, isn't going to work. It doesn't mean you give up on the Labour Party, but we do have to be realistic about what the Labour Party in its current form and historically has achieved and what it's set up for. So again, what this NEC in Unison is going to do is going to try to democratise and divert funds back to members to campaign locally and nationally. It's about democratising Unison, decentralisation. It's about only 23% of members subs, and it's quite expensive being in Unison, I think. Only 23% of the subs are going to the members, to campaigns. All the rest, presumably, well, you could imagine a substantial amount of our subs are going to bureaucrats who get paid a lot of money, you know. And then Paul Holmes as the grassroots candidate, Paul Holmes standing on the NEC again, and everyone's standing for the left slate. I'm pretty sure, well,
Ross, can I just cut you? I don't want to cut you too short, but just time is pressing.
Yeah, that was it. Thank you. I've finished now. So please keep an eye out for your emails. Anyone here on the call in Unison, I think there's a mail out coming out with all the. There's just a graphic that just tells you who to vote for, which region you're in, what job section you work in, and please take a picture of yourself. Tag the poll for NEC. Tag LLA, and let's get selfies with the ballot forms and all that, and really talk to everybody if you work in healthcare, if you work in any place where Unison's the dominant union, please have conversations with people about it. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you very much. Tina, you had your hand up next.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. Yes, I think it's we have to start from a similar point. Then when we look at the trade unions and we look at the Labour Party, isn't it? They need radical transformation and democracy. I mean, none of them are particularly well organized in transparency, etc. I mean, it's, just look at Labour Party conference and how votes are being cast there, the block vote, it's quite a disgrace how these things work and how branches are being disenfranchised, etc. And it's all in the hands of the General Secretary, etc. So I agree a lot with what Ross was saying, especially when we look at the Unite leadership elections. Beckett is probably the best of a not that great bunch of candidates standing, and we don't have to be, I think should be careful that we don't idolize them, or just like some people did with Corbyn, he's wonderful and with him at the helm everything will be fine. No, it won't. We have to continue fighting and pushing from below. Beckett is a trade union bureaucrat, yes, chiefly. I mean, if you look, I think that says a lot. If you look at a union leader's attitude towards taking a worker's wage, average worker's wage of the people he represents, it's a hugely important demand. It's not just something old-fashioned, etc. But if you're on 150k a year, you lead a different life. You become something quite different. You don't really understand what the people you represent are, the struggles they're going through, etc. You can still be a good bloke, etc. Frederick Engels was a millionaire and a socialist, Marxist, etc. But that's the exception. I think it matters quite a lot that any good candidates would put forward, would be prepared to live on an average worker's wage, which in some industries is about 30k, I would have thought. So he's not, Beckett is not doing that. None of the left-wing candidates are doing that. He's also on the open selection a bit dodgy. He says Corbyn told Unite to vote against open selection at the party conference, which is also something Len McCluskey put out. I've since heard that's not true, but who knows? Corbyn won't say. He didn't stand up to it either. It's his ally, etc. So they've been pushing it, towards each other. Nobody came out great out of that debacle. I mean, that could have been, not the answer to all our problems, open selection, but it was a huge symbolic defeat against the wishes of 95% of the CLP delegates. So the Labour Left Alliance organizing group, which is in between, conferences as the highest decision-making body, just agreed that we have a poll, when we did have it, organized by Pam and Carol, and that this poll, the result of the poll, will be taken into account when we then actually launch at the end, when we know who's on the ballot paper, when we make the final recommendation. Not only because we don't know quite who's on the ballot paper yet, is if Coyle gets on that and 3 left-wingers, that would be potentially quite a problem, splitting the left vote, etc. But there's also the possibility that Beckett or whoever comes out with some terrible things closer to the election time. So it's best to keep a flexibility there. So at this stage, we are calling on comrades to nominate Beckett. He's won our Hastings, he's won the poll. He's the only one who came to our Hastings, and he was very good at it. But I think we have to be very careful that we don't uncritically and sort of, these are the wonderful, wonderful leader. He's potentially not. So let's keep a certain our faculties switched on when we support these people.
Thanks very much, Tina. Is Steve McKenzie next, please?
Right. Can you hear me? Thank you very much for that, Tina. absolutely correct. We mustn't idolise any of the three national officers claiming to be on the left, all on six-figure salaries at the moment. And whoever wins a General Secretary election, 150,000 plus. So I agree with everything you say there. It's always been about retaking our unions at a rank and file level. And that means in the workplaces and in the branches and rebuilding the stewards committees and the stewards networks. Just want to speak on the Unite situation, as so clearly and correctly been pointed out just now. We've voted to back Howard Beckett in the nomination period, and then once the nominations are over, you know, we revisit and establish where we're at. In Unite, because it's so bureaucratically controlled, all right, it's been a left bureaucracy as opposed to a right-wing bureaucracy like Unison and the GMB, but it's still tightly controlled by that bureaucracy. Because of that, we have a situation where you need 174 branches to nominate you to be able to get on the ballot. And that means that, you know, some of the four candidates might not make it, which is why we've got to revisit it. But we've voted to back Howard Beckett in the nomination section of it. And that's what all Unite LLA members have now got a responsibility to go out and do. And, you know, I think they've got a job and a half in front of them. I know one or two well-organised branches where meetings have already been organised in accordance with the rules. And the rules have to be adhered to because there will be legal challenges and all sorts if it's not done properly. All branch members have to be contacted and told of the meeting and their right to participate in it. And the meetings have to take place before the 7th of June. I approached my own branch secretary explaining this, and he's speaking to the region tomorrow who are meant to be able to help out with this, but he's told me that quite frankly, doesn't believe that we're going to be capable of organising such a meeting. And I've got a dreadful feeling that a lot of comrades are going to come up against the same sort of thing if they have they do the right thing and actually push to find out what's going on in their branch. If you're in Unite, please come to the caucus tomorrow night because we can discuss this in more depth. Yes, things are not perfect, but I think we're trying to make the best of a bad job with what we got. So I'll shut up there.
Thanks very much, Steve. It's Mari. We can go to Mari Lynham. She's next in the queue. Over to you, Mari.
Oh, hello. Thank you for this meeting and the possibility for everyone to speak, which is very great, which shows a very an organization that seeks to advance. I agree with what was said before, that there's a huge lack of new leaders. When you look at the leaders to, in fact, replace those we have, they are very limited. But I think the conclusion for that, though that it might mean that there is a decomposition, a decomposition of social democracy, quite honestly, I think this is right. There is also transitional stages to come. So it is quite right, it seems to me, to call for supporting people who are not perfect, but who can, like Tina was explaining, who can represent an opportunity for change. And in that process, we can make further changes. So I think this is the way to look at new leaders and to try to present change, even if it's not going to be perfect. About what we are discussing in the union, I note, of course, like everybody has, that open selection has been what the unions have stopped. And I don't know what would have happened had it been voted, because it might not have been implemented. You know, that was just only a vote. But nevertheless, that was a point at which the trade unions showed the tremendous force of the bureaucracy. And I think this is one of the powers behind Starmer. It is not that he floats in the air and make friends with the capitalists. He has a basis whereupon he can lean, on which he can lean to repel the left. I note that in my union, when I tried to put a resolution as CGMB, I tried to put a resolution against the false allegations. I was told this is a Labour Party matter. But me, as a political officer, I'm getting literature from the GMB, central GMB, which says we have to defend Labour. So what they are doing, in fact, they are defending Labour, but they don't want me in the union, to actually defend the left of the unions, the left of the Labour Party. So it is in fact a machine where I'm expected to just support the official leaders. And so it's not going to be a short story, this. It is very ingrained, it is very profound, it's going to take time. I note that Tina raised the question of the average worker's wage, which is really very important. So behind all the things that we do immediately in Unison, Unite, and possibly GMB, if I can manage to do something, and others, I think we have to look at points of program, the average worker's wage, that the decisions that of the leaders, of the of the trade union leaders should be taken at mass meetings. They don't do that. And they don't call internal elections through open meetings. It's all, you never know when the election is going to be, and you don't know you don't know anything. And it's only a few people who are well involved who get to know things, but the rank and file don't. And so in my GMB last time, with the leader that we had voted, or apparently voted, he was voted with a very small amount of votes. And we knew that only afterwards. And then this is not acceptable. And then the decisions to be taken at mass meetings, the decisions about strike and ending strikes to be put to mass meetings, the instant recall and the recall of the leaders, and the wages to rise, demanding the wages rise because of automation. Automation has to be shared. The hours have got to be, we should work only 2 hours, 2 days a week now through the automation that there is. But of course, the capitalists have appropriated trillions and quadrillions, trillions and trillions of the profits of automation, which means that now there is nobody's got a job, and then the few people who got a job, they've got to run, like these people who deliver parcels, they do it running, or the people who collect the rubbish, they do it running. And so myself, the contribution I can make is with ideas of how on the political level in the unions, because my union is at the moment very limiting, strictly limiting space. So I want to contribute at that other level of a program. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Mara. There were some excellent points there. Very, very good indeed. Thank you. We're going to Matthew Jones now, please.
Hi, comrades. Yeah, I mean, I said previously, I think these union elections will be very, very important in terms of direction, not merely in the unions, but more politically elsewhere. But I think we do need to be critical. I mean, the yardstick really for unions is can they actually lay a glove on the employer, and do they actually win? And the point is, what we've been facing at the moment is for the last 30 years, they haven't. And in fact, they've generally the union bureaucracy is being used by the capitalists as a means of disarming the workers and facilitating the attacks on jobs and conditions. And in fact, I mean, what the methods of the capitalists in terms of things like dividing up the workforce into smaller and smaller bits, and making sure that if there is, a dispute or whatever else, it is isolated in the smallest possible sections of the workforce, and there isn't a more general response. And the problem is that, of course, the union bureaucracy and so on has facilitated that. So what we're seeing, in terms of the historical point, of course, is that the smaller and smaller sections of workers being left out essentially, on their own. And the question is, okay, how do we organise against that, change that pattern, and say, well, look, the working class has to respond on a more general basis, has to organise on a more general basis, and we have to, start organise more effectively in the workplace, in order to win back some of the things that have been taken off us. I also think that one of the interesting things that's happened with the Howard Beckett campaign is he has actually started raising a whole series of political questions, which is good. But I mean, I think we have to say, look, I agree actually with the original criticism of a guy called Daniel De Leon in the States when he criticised the industrial workers of the world. This is a one-winged duck, or wobbly as it was called. Of course, both industrial action and politics flow together for the working class, and the working class has to pursue both. And they sit together, and one without the other is useless, and therefore we have to draw the political conclusions. And that's not just legislation, that's also in terms of the political organisation of the working class itself, for its own objectives, and in terms of how it pulls itself together and what it puts forward in political terms, and not just in terms of the structures of unions, or in terms of the structures of legislation, or in terms of the structures of the Labour Party. I mean, obviously, if we look at the history of the organisation of the working class, it takes many different forms, and it goes beyond all of those organisations, and we should be looking at that. How does the working class organise itself most effectively under these conditions, and under conditions in which we have got a very large section of the working class now is operating in precarity. People are basically being given work on a casual basis all the time, and are being left in these positions, and the unions essentially have drawn back from that whole section of the workforce. We don't want to get involved in that because it's too much like hard work and too much like heavy conflict with some fairly vicious employers. And in fact, of course, we can see those precarious workers have actually had to rely on non-TUC unions to do most of the heavy lifting in terms of fighting for that key section of the working class. And the thing is, okay, how is it that you start to confront some of that? Because that's another way that the capitalists are using to control the working class. So we need to start looking at some of these issues and questions, and go beyond what exists, but also to say, okay, well, politics cuts through all of this lot, and we don't accept, the current organisations, and we don't accept the current politics. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Matthew. Ross, you have your hand up? Would you like to come back in again? Ross, you have your hand up. Ross, are you wanting to come in? Ah, there you are.
Sorry, I meant to put it down because I just realised I've spoke far too much. So I'll put something in the chat instead. I just wanted to say that I think because Sharon Graham and Steve Turner didn't turn up, and I know that Steve Turner was particularly rude in an interview, but it does rather emphasise that if we look at it the other way, that they are focused on. My understanding is that their campaigns are focused on, decentralising the union. They're focused on the union, so in that way they might not. If we're trying to sort of argue the point that we need an extra parliamentary movement, then if their focus is on that, it isn't necessarily to the detriment of the left of the party. Now, I know some people think that Steve Turner and Sharon Graham are more right wing, but I think we don't know enough about their campaigns. And my thinking is that they're actually, that the Troy Beckett's ideas is that it does rely on getting a Labour Party and legislation with which to do things, rather than empowering people in the unions, which seems to be the focus of Sharon Graham's campaign. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Ross. Thank you very much indeed. I don't see any other hands up. So people seem to have had their say. What I'd like, if I may be permitted to speak, I just want to encourage people, get to your branch meetings, get involved in your unions, change things from the bottom up. You know, get that grassroots movement going, because I feel that the unions are absolutely key, particularly now that we've had this terrible election result, and it looks like Starmer's under a lot of pressure to go. I think the unions are very, very important, and it needs you, the grassroots people, to get in there, get into your branch meetings, start talking about the elections that are going on, the NEC elections in Unison, the General Secretary elections that are going on in Unite. You need to get into your branch meetings, and you really need to start, if you can, I know some of you probably are very active in your unions, but if you can get in there and really start this grassroots movement in the unions, I think it will be a great step forward. Thank you. I believe that we've come to the end of the agenda. Am I right, Tina?
Yep.
Right. We've actually got 15 minutes to spare. Whoa.
You don't have to fill them, but if anybody has any announcements or whatever, this would be the time to do it. Or we just, go 15 minutes early.
Okay. So
you can all unmute yourself now and say goodbye.
Bye, comrades.
Yeah. Bye, comrades. Cheers. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.